Good afternoon and welcome to the Online Technology Conference. My name is Dominique Jackson and I'll be giving you a presentation on assistive technology. Do you know who uses it? Assistive technology, otherwise known as AT, is an assistive, adaptive, and rehabilitative device or devices used to support those with disabilities, both intellectual and physical, as well as the elderly population. AT consists of speech and hearing devices, motorized wheelchairs, hearing aids, cognitive aids, even closed captioning is considered assistive technology. AT bridges the gap between the disabled and their able counterparts. As stated in the last slide, different types of assistive technology consist of mobility aids such as wheelchairs, scooters, canes, and crutches, hearing aids, cognitive aids for memory, attention, and thinking skills, automatic page turners, closed captioning, ramps, and prosthetics. These devices really help the disabled be able to do things that they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. And this is a very important theme of this entire presentation. The disabled are unable to do certain things, but assistive technology really gives them the ability to be able to do these things and integrate and really participate with their peers in these activities. Assistive technology is the solution in special education, giving students with special needs the opportunity to learn amongst their peers. One of the things that we'll touch on later in this presentation are 504 and IEPs and the different kind of accommodations that they provide to students with disabilities. In a quote by Matt Donnelly, assistive technology refers to the devices that assist special needs students with physical or intellectual impairments in adapting to a standard classroom environment. These devices include alternating keyboards, braille displays, voice recognition software, reading comprehension programs, and speech synthesizers. Such devices are but the latest in a series of advancements, encouraged financially and legislatively by states and the federal government to harness the power of technology to enrich the lives of the disabled. This is a very important theme throughout this presentation, and something that will likely be repeated quite a bit, that assistive technology really provides an opportunity to those with disabilities. And additionally, state and federal governments, they have made assistive technology accessible to students with special needs, providing them an opportunity to learn in the same environment as their peers. Think back to maybe 50 or 60 years ago, where a child in a wheelchair didn't have access to the same kind of education because there wasn't a way for them to even get into the school, let alone be in a classroom with their peers. When things started to adapt and change, and there were special needs classrooms and special classrooms for those with disabilities, whether they were physical or intellectual, that really separated those with disabilities from the rest of their peers and their grades. So now when you look at schools today, we have integrated classrooms for both the disabled and the able, so that kids can really learn together and still get that social interaction that they need. This is really important, and it really adds to the growth and development of children. When you cut out that social aspect, they're unable to build those social skills. And in all honesty, it's just not fair when you separate them. Now, when a child has severe intellectual or physical disabilities, that does add a different kind of element to things, and everything is handled on a case-by-case basis in most public schools. So honestly, it depends. But a lot of classrooms have mixed learning, and mixed learning really allows students to be able to play and grow with their classmates. And these are the people that they'll be with for the next 10 or 11 years. When we talk about AT in the capacity of a problem, people tend to think about accessibility. Now, accessibility is a huge problem in many areas, but with assistive technology being accessible, it's really everyone's problem. There are a number of different people, all ages, that need assistive technology that don't have access to it or don't know how to gain access to it. Assistive technology being accessible is everyone's problem. This is a problem on a state and federal level, in education, and that of the disabled and the elderly. On the state and federal levels, legislators need to be up to date on advancements in AT to better enforce laws surrounding AT as far as accessibility, funding, and things of that nature. In education, teachers need to be educated on how to use AT to better support their students with special needs. This is a problem for the disabled being able to access assistive technology and really knowing what's available to them and at what price it's available to them at. This is the elderly's problem because without AT, they can suffer greatly to the severity of dying early because they don't have the tools to live a full life. When people retire, at least in the United States, they typically tend to be on a fixed income where they can't exceed a certain amount of expenses during the month. For example, my grandmother is on Social Security, and with the thing that she's on, she only gets a set amount of money in the beginning of the month and has to wait until the following month to receive more. With her being on this with her being on this fixed income, she can afford to splurge on things the way that a younger person with a steadier income could. So having AT be more accessible to the elderly at a much cheaper price is something that we really need to focus on, in, not only in a state and federal level, but also with the insurance companies and the companies of these that make the assistive devices. So essentially what we're looking at here is changing the way that we look at AT, the way we provide AT, and how much we charge for AT. Quote by Lonnie. Instead, government agencies and academic universities persist on identifying innovation as the key solution to all critical problems and position themselves as the source of such innovations. All they ask is a continued investment in public funding with no established metrics of accountability. This approach has not demonstrated evidence of success, particularly in niche markets where it is easy to identify and trace the origin of innovations introduced to the marketplace. So, what this quote is really saying here is that, government agencies and different academic universities, really claim this innovation standpoint being the key solution without really providing a solution for those who need it. So for example, I work at an educational center, and majority of the clients that we see are in middle and high school, and they have one or more learning disabilities. One of our current students, who is just a joy to work with, has high functioning autism as well as Tourette's. So when he's in school, he requires not only the assistance of an aide, but he also requires the assistance of a Chromebook. Now, Chromebooks are, made for many different things and used in many different industries, but especially with those with learning disabilities. So James in particular doesn't do any of his work on paper. Unfortunately, with James's Tourette's, it makes it difficult to, one, control handwriting, and it also makes it difficult for him to be able to turn in assignments on time. In addition to James, being a high-functioning autistic child with Tourette's, he has ADHD. So if you don't know too much about ADHD, not only is it a focus and attention issue, but it has a lot to do with memory and forgetfulness. Many of the students that we see in our center have some form of ADHD. There used to be two types, ADD and ADHD. Now it's all one. It's all considered ADHD. You have inattentive, where the hyperactivity is not a factor, and you have attentive, where the hyperactivity is a factor. So inattentive children tend to struggle more with the memory and organizational skills, whereas the children that have the attentive type of ADHD not only struggle with the memory and organizational skills, but they also struggle with really not being able to focus, and a lot of times medication is implemented to really help them. For James in particular, the solution that the school was able to provide was a Chromebook for him to complete his work through Google Classroom, and then an aide to accompany him to every class. Now, we understand that assistive technology is very clear in the Chromebook that was provided, but his aide would also be considered assistive technology. Now, she may not be a computer and she may not be some kind of technology, but she is there as assistance to him to help him get back on track when he gets distracted or if he gets stuck in a loop. Typically, students that suffer from Tourette's, when they get stuck in a loop, They come up with an idea in their head, and it's very difficult for them to get off of that unless they're distracted by something else. So his aid is there to help him when those distractible moments just become too much and become a disruption. There are so many different types of assistive technology that sometimes it can be hard to recognize them, but the people that work in special education and accompany our students are certainly considered assistive technology. When we talk about the harm that AT causes, children with special needs in low-income areas may be most seriously harmed by the technological solution of assistive technology. Harm in this case means that these low-income areas have less resources and therefore cannot offer the same kinds of AT as middle and upper class areas. Lower income areas do not receive the same funding as schools in middle and upper class areas. State and federal legislators can change these laws and evenly distribute funding to ensure that all schools receive the necessary funding for AT. The sooner laws change, the sooner children with special needs can have access to AT in these low-income areas. AT can change and improve the lives, something that should happen regardless of socioeconomic status. So when we really think about these students, I really want everyone to kind of have a picture in their head. So I'll give you another example from my job. At the center, we work with a family. We do educational advocacy, and this one particular family, they live in Baltimore County. The daughter is an 8-year-old girl who is severely autistic and has issues with eloping. Now, eloping is when a child tries to leave either the room or area that they're in, and in this case, she tries to leave her classroom as well as the school. As you can see, that would be a very serious issue should she get out of the school, because if she gets into the street, she could very well be hit by a car. When we started working with this client, she was in a private placement school in Baltimore that cost $2,500 a month out of pocket by her parents that was not funded by the county. So when she started working with us, we started to fight for her to be put into another private placement that was funded by the county. Moral of this story, to make it short, the school fought us back and forth until we ended up in mediation in the Court of Hearings in Baltimore, Maryland. So what ended up happening, they did not agree to private placement, but they did agree to put her in a school that was better suited for her needs, that had more resources to support her disabilities. When you end up in mediation, it can be a very tricky process. With this family in particular, they decided to accept the offer that was given by the state, and they moved quickly into their new placement. Now, that doesn't always happen. Other times, there are families that don't accept and believe that the school system did not do enough, so they sue the county or the state. And most of the time, when it gets to that level and they have to hire a lawyer, then typically they win, and they can be placed into schools that cost between $20,000 to $30,000 a year entirely for free. Now, it's a very long and extensive process to go through that I don't think any parent should have to go through, but we just don't have the resources in some of these schools to really be able to support that process. Now, as mentioned earlier, I brought up the different kinds of accommodation plans that are provided on a state and federal level. So a 504 plan is a plan developed to ensure that a child who has a disability identified under the law and is attending elementary or secondary educational institutions receives accommodations that will ensure their academic success and access to the learning environment. Now, on the other hand, you have an IEP, or an individualized education program, often called the IEP. This is a legal document under the United States law that is developed for each public school child in the U.S. who needs special education. Now, the difference between these plans is that a 504 plan is typically an accommodation plan that isn't necessarily based on an intellectual disability. Sometimes it can be, but typically this is for students that suffer from more emotional issues or things like ADHD. Then they just need special treatment as far as extended time on tests, preferential seating. Sometimes kids need words printed bigger on paper in order to do their work properly, different things like that. They're very minor accommodations that are easy to implement. Now, an IEP is a legal document that, if not followed, then the school system, the state, so on, could be sued for not providing what's in that plan. So these things are much more specific. These can include things like occupational therapy, speech therapy, all kinds of different things that have to take place each day during the school day. So in both situations, the teachers will receive a 504 or an IEP in the beginning of the year, and they're required to provide these things to the student. Now, if it's found that they aren't, typically they'll meet at the school first and, kind of readjust and reset and make sure that it's being followed. But it really depends on the case. With any solution, problems tend to follow. So when we think about students that do have these special needs, when we implement assistive technology, specifically speech-to-text assistive technology for students that have suffered traumatic brain injuries, otherwise known as TBI, it has its limitations when it comes to handwriting. When you focus all your energy on speech-to-text, there is no need for handwriting, and handwriting will tend to deteriorate over time for those students with TBI. So at least 2 studies have demonstrated that supplementing the application of speech-to-text with advanced writing planning instruction will further improve the quality of writing in students with these disabilities. While this is great, speech-to-text can limit written expression, and we really need to focus on providing all services to really support growth in all of these areas for these students. So a solution to this problem is implementing more targeted therapies at school. AT is used as an accommodation plan in the public school system through individualized plans, educational plans, IEPs. Writing therapies can be used as an accommodation as well. So they need to be used together in conjunction with one another. So at the center, we use different things, and one of them is the cognitive training program. So the process is very simple. Clients come in and they schedule an assessment appointment. We offer different kinds of assessments, such as neuropsychological, which is typically known as an IQ test, reading, which detects or gives an indicator of dyslexia, math, which gives an indicator of dyscalculia, which is a math disability, and writing that gives you an indication of dysgraphia, which is a writing disability, as well as executive functioning, otherwise known as ADHD. Once you get your results, the results will include data description, treatment programs, or educational recommendations. Those recommendations can be used to implement a 504 or an IEP. And then you have a couple of different routes. You can either start a different kind of therapy, whether that's emotional-based therapy, speech therapy, eye therapy, it depends. Or you start a cognitive training program. A cognitive training program focuses on the specific deficient areas that somebody is weak cognitively to really strengthen them so they can improve their skills overall. Now, those skills can be improved in education, memory, different kinds of techniques. Once the program is completed, then you do post-testing. Post-testing gives you a side-by-side, apples-to-apples view of where you started and where you ended to show growth from the beginning. Manufacturers of AT, politicians, and government-funded programs may acquire special political and economic powers in relation to AT. Big surprise. Big business, government, they can receive all kinds of special, treatment and accommodations for the things that they provide to the public as far as AT is concerned. Officials can be reelected. Companies can receive a huge revenue boost, things of that nature. Now we bring disabled veterans into the conversation. Only 1 in 10 disabled veterans have access to mobility assistive technology such as prosthetics. Disabled veterans have essentially started a conversation through a research that's been done. And this provides researchers with direct consumer information as far as accessibility is concerned with disabled veterans and the overall cost. And this kind of research can really help those who make and manufacture assistive technology and allow them to make it more affordable for those who have, 1, served for our country, and 2, genuinely need it. Assistive technology is a solution for people with disabilities, both physical and intellectual, and those with impairments. People who use AT come in all shapes, ages, and abilities. Now that you know who uses AT and how we can make changes for even more people to access it, we can really work together to provide these things to those who need it. I suggest that everybody, do just a little bit of research and really find out who uses it and how we can provide more of it. Thank you for coming to the online technology conference. My name is Dominique Jackson, and I hope you learned a lot and are interested in helping others gain access to the things that they need. Have a great day.